Aloha kakayaka, this is Pokalai Nui, and I am your host for this morning's program. This is Hawaiian Potpourri. We are produced by the Hawaiian National Broadcast Corporation. The opinions expressed in this program are not necessarily those of the staff and management of this radio station or of the Hawaiian National Broadcast Corporation. Today is the 8th day of April. For some, it's Easter Sunday, and folks out at Makua should still be there. They should end their services at 8 o'clock. I was speaking with a friend of mine, Fred Dodge, who reminded me that on the second anniversary that they went out, I had attended a sunrise service with them. And normally what they do is they have this opportunity, and this is about, 15 years ago, an opportunity to go in a circle and express your mana'o to the rest of those who had attended. And at that time, the military had sent some personnel there, some high-ranking officers, to be in attendance, I guess, to show the new working relationship between the Hawaiians and the military, and in this attempt to show how they are very concerned and protective of the culture and culture of Hawaii, and the respect for the spirituality of the land. And I was given the opportunity also to make a few comments when my turn came around. And some people would consider it unfortunate. Other people would consider it fortunate. There was some difference of opinion as to my opinion, and my opinion was that I am a person who was, yes, concerned about the cultural integrity of the land here at Makua and Kahanahaiki, which is a shared valley where the bombing is occurring. And I am just as much concerned about the protection of these sites than they not be destroyed by the military. But of something of far greater importance that must be said to the military is that I object to the use of Hawaiian lands, these lands of aloha, for training of U.S. military so that the U.S. government can continue with their policy of going overseas and killing people and taking over their assets just as they did here in Hawaii. So while I am concerned about the cultural integrity of the lands at Makua, I'm also concerned about the abuse of the use of these lands to simply train killers to go into other countries and invade, just as they have invaded Hawaii. And so for my message to the military, it's not only to be kind as you undertake your stewardship to Makua, but there's a second message, and it is, Yankee, go home. Go home back to your homeland. Release the occupation that you have over Hawaii through your military might, and stop the abuse of our land simply to train your soldiers to take over someone else's lands. The statement wasn't very long, but there were some repercussions, I understand, after the statement was made. There seems to have been some objection by some military personnel, as well as some civilians who were more closely associated or aligned with the military than I was, and some protests that perhaps I should not be invited back. The Makua Ohana, the organization that holds these sessions, however, have in fact extended an invitation to return, and in defense of my statement, saying that it's not whether or not you agree or disagree with Poka, but it's a question of whether or not he has a right to say it. Was it a valid statement? Was there justification behind the statement? And that is what we should be looking at, rather than merely the turning of the statement into an insulting statement to some people who were there, those associated with the military. So there are differences of opinion, and I had been invited to join them this morning, and with my apologies, I had to beg out, not because I didn't believe in the continuing validity of my earlier statements, but simply because the message I have chosen to share is to a wider audience, and this is the audience on KWAI. All right. The next issue I wanted to cover actually goes back to an earlier issue from the earlier caller, and I will get to that as well as make a distinction and continue to talk about Leon Siu and his work in the international arena, a distinction from my work in the international arena. While they are very similar, there were some differences, of course, during the period of time that we were active, and other things like that. I recognize that we do have another caller on the line, and I'll get to the caller after I take a very quick sweep into these 2 points. The first point is with regards to the forms of empireship. And the last caller in the earlier hour had noted that there seems to be a separation among American citizenry. And I mean it not in the legal sense, but in a broader sense. One group of people who have been subject to the conquest of themselves, of their culture, and of their lands, and made to be the victims of the sort of a vulture-like approach in which the vulture will eat its own kind. So that the Native Americans who have had their lands, their cultures, their ways taken away from them, used to sap and to use those resources for a newer group who have come in. They have even shut the borders and declared themselves the watchers of these borders, and this is through the border control, so that foreigners, not including themselves, are to be counted and are to be categorized and determined by these newer foreigners as to who can come across the borders. Where are the indigenous people? Where are the native people of that land? They are marginalized, pushed to the margins, pushed on the side. And so the two groups that you have are the takers and the victims in the U.S. as an empire. But what she was also saying, I believe, is that at many times when empires are created, the overseas colonies are used, or their assets are used to feed into the empire itself, so that England as an empire was able to use the American colonies to gather some of the wealth there. Or in Central and South America, what Spain did and what other countries would do in other empires. They would take the resources, take the wealth out of those empires and feed into the central area. Britain would abuse England, would abuse India and take the resources out of India. And so it's this idea out of Burma as well, and out of Fiji, and out of all of the other areas that they had controlled, including Australia and New Zealand and other places. But she was distinguishing, in the case of the United States, the profits that would come out of the empires that the United States have held doesn't seem to benefit really, that second category. They've already ripped apart the values or the wealth of the first category, but the overseas empires doesn't seem to be so greatly improving those of the second category. It's an interesting approach, an interesting view. And in fact, the vulture is eating among its own numbers and not even, and separating the folks that they find here. And I would suggest that while we don't see the profits coming into the United States from the colonies that are being held, it is because within the United States you have, among that division, those people, or the one percenters, I guess that's the best way to identify them, who are at the very cream of the crop. They are we can call them the king vultures, who have been able over a period of time to shed their nationalist identification and become internationalist. And they have been able to shed their individual personality and have now formed corporate personalities, although you still have individuals controlling it. So that the sucking out of the wealth is coming into the, quote, United States. But they have been able to break the national boundaries, and they are now internationalists, so that it is organizations such as Halliburton, organizations such as these major GMO companies, Monsanto, organizations such as Shell Oil and all the other oil companies. They're still there, they're still sucking out the energy, the resources, and they are using the American soldier, they're using the lands that they claim to be American to be able to suck out these resources. Okay, that's my very brief review of and taking from what the earlier caller had called about. I notice now we have two callers, and I had wanted to talk about Leon, but that's going to be maybe a move a little bit too much away from the major subject. Let's leave it at that. Let's go to our first caller, and if you would like to call, our telephone number here is 524-1080. Aloha, caller. Welcome to the program.
Aloha, Poka.
Yes, aloha.
You were saying that you made some brief remarks which yeah that
was not appreciated as I was hoping it would be.
Where was this now again?
This was at Makua. This was back about 15 years ago when they started the sunrise services.
Yeah.
And so they invite the community to come and take a look at what's happening. And the military and the civilian organization had joined together. The military is finally saying, okay, you will have access to Makua. And so they have this annual gathering.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was part of that. It was a second annual gathering, I believe. Yeah, in which I had been invited to join in that group and share comments like everyone else had opportunity to share their comments. Yeah.
However, yours were unique. Is that right?
There weren't many others who were joining in the Yankee Go Home theme. And sometimes you don't want to embarrass or turn off people who see themselves as Yankees and yet see themselves as being very supportive. And it was, I guess, to a certain degree, shock them into the reality that you are foreigners in our land. And when you come here, as you wear the uniform and you stand among us, you are very definitely the enemy. And I'm not saying all American citizens should go home. I'm saying those who participate in the colonization of Hawaii.
Yeah.
This is our response.
Right, right. Well, to me, those who wear those uniforms or those who support them and who like to think of themselves as American, if they would object to your remarks and try to keep you or anyone else of similar mind from being able to voice that perspective again at one of these gatherings. Are these people really Americans? I mean, when what is that country supposed to be about? What do they claim to fight for? You see, that is really irritating for me to find that. I can understand maybe one of those people say, "Hey, listen, I disagree with you, but hey, you certainly have a right to say it if that's how you really feel, Or hey, let's talk about that, But to just have the attitude, don't have this guy come back here again. We don't want to hear it. Hey, Come on.
I guess you had a range of views on it or responses, and there were some who have not said that they are Hawaiians or willing to change their nationality. They might be, especially at this time, but they were very clearly Haoles who had been working in Hawaii and very dedicated to the principles of the United States, including the principle of the right of free speech. And their dedication as Americans was to the right of free speech, not to all of the other activities of the United States. And so they came in and defended. Well, he has a right to say what he believes, and this is why we open the discussion to people who want to make comments. Are you saying that they can only comment if they agree with you and will support the militarization?
Yeah.
And so other people were sort of stepping back, but there was still that grumbling going on about, do you really need to invite this guy back?
Really?
Yeah.
I hope there weren't any Kanaka who were of that.
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
Not that I know of. But this idea of freedoms, this idea of free speech, this idea of a free exchange of ideas is not really limited even to the Poe Hawaii or the Haole or the Japanese. These are what we call human values that permeate through all different races and cultures. And this was a good example, and I've had some other examples when we refused to rise for the judge in the case in which they arrested many of our or my clients from Makua.
Yeah.
The whole courtroom refused to rise. And who were in the courtroom? Not only the Hawaiian activists, those supporting independence, but we had those who were pure Haoles who had been here just for a few years but could immediately appreciate what we were talking about.
Right.
And so they said, I am an American citizen, but as an American citizen, I need to respect the rights and the essential story that needs to be told. So they were willing to be found in contempt of court with the rest of us.
Right.
Yeah, and so it wasn't a matter of only the Hawaiians are standing up or refusing or whatever it is, but you always come down to it's a basic issue of humanity.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I think there's way too many Americans who are too quick to jump on a bandwagon. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They claim to love their country and if you ask them why, invariably almost they will use the word liberty or freedom somewhere.
Yeah.
But they're so quick to rise to the playing of the national anthem and to place their hands over their hearts. Mm-hmm. But where the rubber meets the road, in a case where you can really stand up and be counted as one who really believes in freedom in
the practice itself,
yes, and
practice.
Human rights. If it's not popular, if it hasn't been officially sanctioned, then they will not. They will not stand, and they would.
Yeah, they won't be counted.
Right, and chicken hawks. Chicken hawks. That is.
Okay.
That's like those who called, like Bush and Cheney and Rumsfeld and all those who had the chance to go to Vietnam, right?
Yeah.
But they had, I think in the words of Dick Cheney, I think he had other priorities. Other priorities, more important pursuits at the time, Didn't want to run up.
The only regret that I have there and the use of the term is I don't mean to insult the chickens, but I get the drift. Poor chickens, to be associated with that idea of chicken hawks.
Yeah. No, but that's so needed, Poka, for someone to stand up at these times and those kinds of places and to present that perspective, because I see too many, even our own people, sad to say, who become just mouthpieces, for the occupier.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they just willing to go along and refer to that place as our nation. Yeah. And it's really, and the sad thing is, Poka, many of these Kanaka are much more educated than me. They're probably smarter than me. I know they're more well traveled than me, but yet they for whatever reason, they just will not. They just will not grasp that we are being victimized here. I mean, and it's not imaginary; it's very real. And we pay a steep price for it. You know, when you hear the expression of the price of paradise, the price of paradise is largely the result of the American occupation.
That's so true, so well put.
Okay, Poka, so hey, keep on. I love to hear that kind of case.
All right, thanks for your telephone call. Aloha. And before I go to our next caller, and I do recognize that we have another caller on the line, I've been told to play a song just about this time so that we can take a video break. So I'm going to play one song.
Kaulana na pua o Hawaii, Kupa ama hope o ka aina, Iki mai ka elele o ka loko ino, Pala pala anunu me ka paka.